What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability, get a free price quote, and you can have me, possibly, at your next event. Entertaining you, entertaining the people. The people need to be entertained. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag, What Makes You Famous. Let's learn some stuff right here on the What Makes You Smarter program. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Friday, April 10th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, unemployment claims passed 17 million in 4 weeks. About 6.6 million Americans applied for jobless benefits last week, the Labor Department reported Thursday. The figure pushed the number of new claims in the past 4 weeks to more than 17 million. The unprecedented surge in people who have lost work due to the COVID-19 crisis has resulted in the worst unemployment in decades. Former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, one of the world's leading economists, estimated the unemployment rate had risen as high as 13%, while others said the figure was surely higher. Quote, "It looks like the unemployment rate is headed to 15%, end quote, said Chris Rupke, the chief financial economist at the MUFG Bank, in a note to clients. Quote, "This isn't a recession, it's the Great Depression too," end quote. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 2, coronavirus toll rises, but Trump pushes to reopen parts of the economy in May. The COVID-19 death toll in the U.S. reached 16,686 people early Friday, with more than 469,000 confirmed cases. The number of new deaths fell to 1,783 on Thursday after 2 consecutive one-day highs of 1,939 and 1,973 on Tuesday and Wednesday. In New York, the epicenter of the outbreak in the United States, the rate of new infections and hospitalizations continued to slow, suggesting the crisis there is plateauing. The virus remains an active threat, but the Trump administration is still quietly pushing to reopen parts of the economy around May 1st. President Trump said Thursday the nation was, quote, "at the top of the hill," end quote, in the crisis. But health experts and economists warn that a return to normal too soon could result in a resurgence of COVID-19. This is according to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Number 3. Democrats reject Senate small business loan bill as too small. Senate Democrats on Thursday blocked a Republican bill seeking $250 billion in additional funding for loans to help small businesses weather the coronavirus crisis. Democrats want to double the size of the package to include aid for hospitals, state governments, and people needing food assistance. Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat Maryland, accused Republicans of orchestrating a, quote, political stunt, end quote, to push legislation with no input from Democrats. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, accused Democrats of holding, quote, Americans' paychecks hostage, end quote, by not accepting the GOP plan, saying, quote, treating this as a normal partisan negotiation could literally cost Americans their jobs, end quote. This is according to Newsweek. Number 4, Biden courts Sanders supporters with Medicare student loan concessions. Former Vice President Joe Biden on Thursday stepped up efforts to unify Democrats by adopting pieces of Senator Bernie Sanders' independent Vermont presidential platform after Sanders suspended his 2020 campaign. Biden, who became the party's presumptive nominee when Sanders dropped out, announced in a blog post that he was proposing to reducing the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to 60. Sanders sought universal health care through his Medicare for All proposal. Biden also said he would push to, quote, forgive all undergraduate tuition-related federal student debt from 2 and 4-year public colleges and universities for debt holders earning up to $125,000, end quote. Sanders had called for canceling all student debt. Biden also thanked Sanders and his supporters for, quote, laying the groundwork for these ideas, end quote. This is according to the New York Times and Joe Biden. Number 5, stocks gain after Fed unveils $2.3 trillion rescue plan. Wall Street gained Thursday for the third day in the last 4 after the Federal Reserve unveiled a $2.3 trillion plan to help local governments and businesses hurt by the coronavirus crisis. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 1.2%, while the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ Composite rose by 1.5% and 0.8% respectively. The U.S. Central Bank said it would work with banks to get 4-year loans for large companies and also start buying bonds of big counties and cities to bolster their finances. Quote, the Fed's move should give some confidence to investors that the risk this time around are maybe not the same as the risk in the financial crisis, end quote, said Randy Watts, Chief Investment Officer at O'Neill Global Advisors. This is according to Reuters. Number 6, Boris Johnson out of intensive care as condition improves. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was transferred out of intensive care on Thursday, but remained in a London hospital to continue receiving treatment after contracting the new coronavirus. Johnson will, quote, receive close monitoring during the early phase of his recovery, end quote, a spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office said. Quote, he's in extremely good spirits, end quote. Johnson is receiving supplemental oxygen, but never needed a mechanical ventilator. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who has temporarily assumed Johnson's duties, did not say when Johnson would resume his normal work or when Britain would be able to lift its coronavirus lockdown. Quote, is it time to ease up on the rules? End quote, he said. Quote, we're not done yet, end quote. This is according to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Number 7, report. US COVID-19 coronavirus strain came from Europe. While the coronavirus outbreak started in Wuhan, China, in late 2019, most of New York's COVID-19 cases came from Europe, and the European mutation was spreading silently around the New York City area by mid-February. 2 groups of viral historians have determined. Teams of geneticists at Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai and the NYU Grossman School of Medicine studied the genomes of coronavirus samples from different groups of COVID-19 cases in New York, finding, quote, a previously hidden spread of the virus that might have been detected if aggressive testing programs had been put in place, end quote. The New York Times reports New York saw its first positive COVID-19 test on March 1st, followed weeks later by a surge of cases. This is according to the New York Times. Number 8, powerful storms sweep across Midwest. Severe storms hit parts of the Midwest on Thursday with high winds, hail, and tornadoes, causing a few injuries and cutting power to about 100,000 people. About 36,000 still had no electricity as of late Thursday afternoon. An EF1 tornado with winds estimated at 100 miles per hour damaged buildings in Mooreville, Indiana, just southwest of Indianapolis. The storm demolished the second floor of a vacant 2-story building and blocked streets with bricks and other debris. One woman was injured when a power line fell on her car. But the state's stay-at-home order due to the coronavirus pandemic kept most people out of the damaged area. Quote, we have some small restaurants downtown here, and folks would be in those under normal circumstances, end quote, said Division Chief John Robinson of the Mooresville Fire Department. Quote, luckily, because of the virus, everyone was gone, end quote. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 9, Georgia postpones primary elections for second time. For the second time this year, Georgia on Thursday postpones its primary elections due to the coronavirus outbreak. The state pushed back the vote from May to June. It was originally scheduled for March 24th. The decision for a second delay came on the same day New Jersey and Virginia postponed their primaries, joining at least 15 other states that have done the same amid the COVID-19 pandemic. On Tuesday, Wisconsin held its Democratic primary and some key state and local elections after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a last-minute order from Governor Tony Evers, Democrat, delaying in-person voting until June. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 10, Mad Magazine cartoonist Mort Drucker dies at 91. Mort Drucker, the beloved artist known for his work at Mad Magazine, has died at 91. Drucker died Wednesday in his home in New York, his friend John Reiner confirmed. Reiner told CNN's Jake Tapper his death was not thought to be related to COVID-19. After joining Mad in 1956, Drucker's hilarious caricatures satirizing pop culture soon became iconic, and he illustrated more than half of the magazine's movie parodies from the 1960s through 2008. Quote, "The world has lost a not just an extraordinary talent, but a shining example of kindness, humility, and humor," end quote, the National Cartoonist Society said in a statement. This is according to the New York Times. That's 10 things you need to know today for Friday, April 10th, 2020. Thank you for listening. This is What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag #WhatMakesYouFamous. That's it for me. Stay safe out there. It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.